All right, so AC Milan versus Juventus, huh? I bet you're here because you know this wasn't just any match.
Oh, absolutely not.
It was a tactical battle, a real chess match. We're going to break it all down. We're talking formations, key moments, star players, and even maybe some things each team could have done differently.
Yeah, even if you've watched the game, you might learn something new about how it all went down, tactically speaking.
Exactly. So big picture first. AC Milan, they're known for their aggressive, high-pressing style, right?
Right.
But this time, under Paulo Fonseca, they went with something, well, a little different. More cautious, defensively focused.
Fonseca knew what he was up against. Juventus, with Allegri, I mean, they're all about controlling the game, possessing the ball. So Fonseca seems like he prioritized a solid defense, picking his moments to press instead of risking those gaps Juventus loves to exploit.
Makes sense. Juventus on the break, that's dangerous.
Well,
So formations. How did it look on the pitch?
okay, so AC Milan, they started in a 4-3-3, but, and this was key, they were ready to shift into a deeper defensive block anytime Juventus had the ball.
Like a chameleon.
Exactly. They adapted to the situation, and don't forget, they had some real power in that midfield.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Adley and Loftus-Cheek, they were like, well, imagine two pillars holding everything up. Breaking up attacks, intercepting passes, shutting down space for Juventus's playmakers.
Okay, but did this more, I guess, conservative style from Milan, did it affect their attack? Because they're not exactly known for sitting back.
That's the interesting thing, right? They were organized, defensively sound, but creating chances, well, that was a bit of a struggle. They had moments you could see the flashes of attacking flair, but I don't know, it felt like they traded some of that firepower for a really strong defense.
Like they were playing not to lose instead of going for the win.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It'll be interesting to see if this is Fonseca's new go-to, or if it was just a Juventus-specific tactic.
Okay, and Juventus, they started in their usual 4-3-3, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they did, but there was more flexibility, you know? Sometimes they looked like a 4-4-2 when they were defending. But I gotta say, what really stood out to me was their focus on the wide areas.
Especially Kostic on the
Yeah.
left, right.
Yes. Trying to overload Milan's wings, create from those areas.
Doesn't seem like it worked too well, though.
No, not really. Milan were ready for it. Shifting their defense, doubling up on Kostic when they needed to. It was tough for him to get anything going.
So Milan did their homework.
Oh, yeah. And you can't talk about Juventus's midfield without mentioning Locatelli. He was playing a little deeper than usual, more like a quarterback, you know, dictating the pace, searching for that killer pass to break through Milan's
And it's
defense.
so important for them. But even with him, still no goals.
Nope. Real tactical battle in that midfield. Locatelli trying to orchestrate. But Milan, so disciplined, shutting down almost every attempt. It was a stalemate.
Speaking of shutting things down, we got to talk about Malik Thiaw, AC Milan's defender. He was immense.
He was everywhere, positioning, perfect, reading the game, anticipating attacks, making those crucial interceptions. You know, he's like the classic no-nonsense defender. Not flashy, just gets the job done. And it's interesting, right? Because it seems like we're seeing this resurgence of those solid defensive values in the game today.
Yeah, good point. Thiaw was definitely a great example of that. But it wasn't just him, though. Theo Hernandez was pretty active for Milan as well, wasn't he?
Or absolutely. Theo Hernandez, always a threat going forward. Even though Milan wasn't creating a ton, he was involved in some of the most dangerous moments.
And for Juventus, we can't forget Locatelli. Even if they weren't clicking up front, he was working hard in midfield trying to make something happen.
He was the engine, for sure. It's like Juventus had all the ingredients for a delicious meal, but they forgot the seasoning.
Ooh, I like that. They were missing that final spark, that bit of magic to turn all that possession into goals.
Exactly. And that's something Allegri will be working on, no doubt, because you need to be able to break down defenses like Milan's if you want to be a real contender.
So we've got formations, key players, the general approaches. Now let's get into some of those specific moments, those turning points that could have changed the whole game.
Okay, let's rewind to the second half, early stages. Remember that chance Cambiasso had for Juventus? He's in a great position, but then Thea. That block.
Oh, yeah. That was huge.
Yeah.
Felt like the whole stadium was holding their breath. If that goes in, who knows what happens?
Yeah, could have been a totally different game. That block kept Milan in it, allowed them to hold their defensive shape. And then, well, there was that Lyon penalty shout.
Oh, that was a big one. What do you think? Penalty or no penalty?
Tough call. I can see why Milan fell hard done by, but I also get why the ref didn't give it. Could argue it both ways, really.
I think I'll let our listeners decide on that one. But it definitely added to the drama. And then right at the end, Theo Hernandez, that header, almost stole the win for Milan.
Oh, man, that was tense. You could feel it in the air. Fantastic save from the Juventus keeper, though.
It was a reminder that even though Milan wasn't, super fluid in attack, they could still create danger, especially from set pieces. Speaking of reminders, this whole match, it reminded us just how good both of these teams can be.
Absolutely. Tactical masterclass from both managers, like a chess match, every move calculated, and even though neither team won, you saw their potential.
So what do you think these managers are going to be focusing on in training this week? If you were Fonseca, what would be at the top of your list?
If I'm Fonseca, I'm drilling my team on those offensive transitions. They need to be more efficient turning defense into attack, quick passing, decisive runs, and clinical finishing. That's where I'd start.
And what about Allegri, his to-do list?
Allegri. He needs to figure out how to unlock defenses like Milan's. I'd be trying different attacking combinations, encouraging more off-the-ball movement, trying to overload those wide areas.
Sounds like both managers have a lot to think about. This Serie A season is shaping up to be really competitive, huh?
Oh, yeah. We've got tactical geniuses like Fonseca and Allegri going head-to-head. Every match is going to be a battle.
Before we move on, one last question for you.
Yeah.
Based on what we saw today, who do you think is better equipped to challenge for the Scudetto? AC Milan or Juventus?
Man, that's a tough one. On one hand, you've got Milan, defensively solid, tactically flexible, super hard to beat. But then you've got Juventus, individual quality, tons of experience. They could definitely turn things around.
It's a real dilemma.
Yeah.
I think they both have the potential, but they both have things to work on. That's what makes it so exciting, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about who's the best now. It's about who can improve, who can adapt throughout the season.
You got it. Adaptability, resilience, and that constant drive to get better. The teams that embrace that, those are the teams that'll be celebrating at the end of the season. Watching this, it kind of reminded me of that Milan-Juventus clash back in 2012. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Similar story. Tight defenses, midfield battle, that real tension throughout the whole match. Even ended in a draw, too.
Oh, yeah, it was a nail-biter. Full of drama, some controversial moments. It's funny how some matches can just bring back memories of those classic encounters.
Yeah, they become part of the rivalry, Adds another layer to these clashes when they happen.
For sure. And speaking of, I think it's worth thinking about how this result, this draw, might affect both teams going forward. What do you think?
Well, for AC Milan, this draw, I think it shows just how resilient they've become defensively and how flexible they are tactically. I mean, they adapted to Juventus, and that's not easy.
Right. They've shown they can adapt to different opponents, different styles of play.
Exactly. And that makes them dangerous,
Yeah, it's like they've added another tool to their toolbox. They're not just that high-pressing, attacking team. They can be more controlled, patient when they need to be.
Precisely. And that versatility, I think, that could be huge for them as the season goes on. They've shown they can grind out results even when they're not playing, their most beautiful football.
Okay, so what about Juventus? What do they take away from this?
I think for Juventus, this might be a bit of a wake-up call. They can't just rely on possession and individual brilliance. They got to be more cohesive in attack, more clinical. They had their chances, but they couldn't break down that Milan defense.
They need to turn that possession into actual goals, more chances, more, penetration.
Exactly. And that might mean some changes from Allegri, maybe tweaking the formation, trying different attacking combinations, or maybe, giving those creative players a little more freedom to do their thing.
One thing I noticed, Milan really struggled to create those clear-cut chances. Why do you think that was?
That's a good point. They were organized defensively, no doubt, but I think maybe they were so focused on containing Juventus that they lost some of their attacking edge.
Like they were playing not to lose instead of playing to win, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah, maybe. So disciplined at the back that they might have accidentally, stifled their own creativity up front.
It's a tough balance to strike, right? Solid defense, but also that attacking spark. Both Fonseca and Allegri, I bet they'll be thinking about that this week.
Definitely, because it's those little things, those subtle adjustments that can make all the difference. It's like those tiny brush strokes an artist uses to create a masterpiece.
Ooh, I like that. And those little details, that's what we're trying to do here, right? Break it down and understand it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this sport so interesting. It's always evolving, always searching for something better. And matches like this, they give us a lot to think about, a lot to analyze.
Okay, so pop quiz. You're Paulo Fonseca. What are you focusing on in training this week?
It's a good one. If I'm Fonseca, I'm working on those offensive transitions. Got to be quicker, more decisive, quick passing, those runs off the ball, and got to finish those chances.
All right, now you're Allegri. Top of your list.
Allegri, he needs to figure out how to break down defenses like Milan's. I'd be trying different things up front, more movement off the ball, trying to overload the wings.
Sounds like they both have their work cut out for them.
They do, but that's what we love, right? These tactical battles, the adjustments, keeps us all on the edge of our seats.
Keeps us talking, for sure. All right, so wrapping up this tactical showdown, what do you think this means for this Serie A title race? Big picture stuff.
Well, it's early, but I think this draw tells us something. Both AC Milan and Juventus, they're serious contenders this year. Each team has their strengths, their weaknesses, and they both approach the game differently.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right? You got these two tactical giants, both going for the title.
And don't forget the others. Inter, Napoli, Roma, they could all challenge Milan and Juventus.
This season is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, it is. And this draw, it just makes it even more interesting. Anything can happen in Serie A.
Even though it was a draw, it still felt like a big result.
I agree. It showed us a lot about both teams. Their strengths, their weaknesses, how they approach the game tactically. Real chess match. And I think both managers, they learned something from this one.
We definitely did.
Hopefully our listeners did too.
So one last question before we get to our final thoughts.
Go for it.
Everything we've talked about, the tactics, the players, what it means for the title race. Who do you think is actually in a better position this season? Milan or Juventus?
Oof. That's the question, isn't it?
It is. What do you think?
It's so close. Honestly, you could make a case for either team. But if I had to pick, I think I'd go with AC Milan.
Really? Interesting. I was kind of leaning towards Juventus, but tell me why. What makes you think Milan's in a better spot?
Well, their defense, it's so solid. Like they were a wall against Juventus, and that's not easy to do. Juventus barely had any clear chances. That shows you how disciplined and organized they are tactically. And I think, that strong defense, that's a great foundation to build on.
Yeah, I get that. It's definitely easier to win when you're not letting goals in. But can they score enough themselves? That's what I keep thinking about.
Right. That's a fair point. They weren't, super impressive going forward in this match, but I think that was partly because of Fonseca's game plan. He was clearly focused on shutting down Juventus, so I wouldn't be surprised to see, more attacking freedom from them against other teams.
So you think they have more to give offensively?
I do. They have players like Leon, Theo Hernandez. They can cause problems for anyone once they find that balance, solid at the back, but also dangerous going forward. Then I think they'll be, a real threat.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're saying Milan because of their defense. But what about Juventus? Doesn't their lack of goals worry you? They had the ball, but they couldn't break Milan down.
Yeah, it's something Allegri needs to figure out for sure. They got to be more clinical, put those chances away. And I think it's more than just the strikers. The midfield needs to be more creative, better passing, more movement off the ball, to create those opportunities.
So it can't just be about individual brilliance. They need to work better as a unit.
Exactly. They have the players to score goals, no doubt. It's about finding that right mix, the right combinations, maybe a little tactical tweak here and there, and then that attacking potential, it'll be there.
Sounds like this title race is going to be a close one. Both Milan and Juventus, they could win it, but they both have work to do.
It's going to be a fun season, that's for sure. And this match, I think it was just a preview of what's to come.
Well, we've talked about a lot today, haven't we? Formations, those key moments, the big decisions, what it all means for the season.
We went deep, really trying to understand those tactical details that make football so interesting.
All right, so now we want to hear from you. What do you think after everything we've talked about? Who do you think is in a better position this season? AC Milan with that strong defense and their adaptability, or Juventus with their possession-based style and, all those star players?
Head over to our social media. Let us know what you think. We love hearing from you. And these tactical discussions, they're always fun to have.
That's what makes football so great, right?
Yeah.
It sparks debate, gets people passionate, brings everyone together.
So keep those conversations going, keep thinking about the game, and most importantly, keep enjoying it.
And that's it for us. This has been The Deep Dive. Signing off.
Ciao.